Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about our sponsor, Upside. Inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back. Personally, I've had to cut back on eating out and going out with friends, and I don't even want to think about what it means for presents in the holiday season. Whether it's dining out less, driving less, or buying less from the grocery store, we can all agree that there's nothing fun about less. And that's why I started using Upside. I don't have to cut back on dining out and going out with friends anymore because I earned cash back on essentials. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, you don't have to cut back because you get cash back on every purchase. And because of this, I'm able to spend that extra cash on a coffee or an extra present for a family member for the holidays. Download the free Upside app to get started. I found the app really easy to use and pretty convenient. Use my promo code Mr. Creeps and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business and pay as usual with a credit or debit card and get paid. You can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside in comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, which is a great deal. I look forward to using this extra cash this holiday season. Again, download the free Upside app and use promo code Mr. Creeps to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code Mr. Creeps. And now into the video. I don't know why I signed up for it. I guess I was just bored and wanted some excitement. Having a weak immune system has sucked even before the pandemic, but it became so much more worse with it. I felt like I couldn't go anywhere or I could die. So for the last 2.5 years, I worked from home, gotten groceries delivered, and done all of my shopping online. Also, I'm single and I have no kids. My dating life was barely alive before, and since the pandemic had started, it has been in a coma, and my only communication is through work, which is mostly just emails, as I'm a freelance writer. I barely talked to anyone these past couple of years, though. I think it was the loneliness and boredom that led me to click on the link. It started as advertisements on websites after I had searched for the best horror movies to watch. Those are my favorite kinds of films, and I'm always looking for low-budget indie ones or foreign ones that I haven't seen. I didn't notice the ads at first since I tend to ignore them, but it eventually became the only ad that I would see. The ads were pretty basic. They had "Fear for Life" written in white over a black bar, and then it had that fake glitch where the words would blur and move before fading to black. When the words were gone, I could see a faint skull hidden underneath all the black. I had been noticing it for about a week. I finally clicked on it after an extra slow stretch of work. It took me to a website called fearforlife.com. There wasn't much to the website. On the bottom was a countdown until Halloween, along with a contour and map so you could see where the webpage visitors were from. I think that I may have been the first visitor since it didn't show any page views when I first went there. There was also text that stated, "Are you ready to fear for life?" I figured being scared would be better than being bored out of my mind, so why not? Although I didn't expect anything to happen anyway. I clicked on the link and it just went to a blank page at first. I was waiting for something else to happen, like a sign-up page or more information to appear, but there was nothing. After staring at the page for a while, I clicked in the middle, and then I went to another page that stated, "Congratulations, you have been approved to fear for the rest of your life. But don't worry, it'll all end on October 31st. I wasn't sure if it was trying to say that being afraid would be over at the end of October, or if my life would be over. Of course, it was just some silly website, and I didn't even enter any personal information. I wondered how it was supposed to work. Maybe the website put cookies on my computer, or I accepted notifications without realizing it. I put my computer on standby and I got ready for bed. That night, I woke up at midnight and thought that I heard a noise. I quietly climbed out of bed and walked over to my door. I stood still and listened. It sounded like someone was whispering something down the hallway. I tried to hear what was being said, but it was just gibberish. I couldn't make out any words. I reached under my bed and grabbed the baseball bat that I kept there for emergencies, and then I returned to my doorway. Looking down the hall, I saw a faint glow coming from the entrance to my office. The whispering continued and grew faster as I went down the hallway. When I came up to the door to the office, it suddenly got quiet. I leaned around the entrance to look in and didn't see anyone in the room. I noticed the green light above my monitor, signaling that the camera was running. The monitor was turned on, but the screen was blank. I walked over to the camera and leaned in to cover the lens, but suddenly an old man appeared on the monitor and began the loud whispering that I'd heard earlier. It startled me and I stumbled backward, falling onto the ground. The man's eyes darted toward me and he screamed. There wasn't much lighting on him, but I could see the bone through the skin on his face, and his eyeballs looked like they were floating in the sockets. He had no eyelids or tissue around them. I got up and turned off the monitor, averting my eyes from the screen as best as I could. And now with my heart beating fast, and that horrible image of the man stuck in my head, it was going to be tough to fall back asleep. Tomorrow I would deal with what I was sure was a virus on my computer from that stupid website. I went back to my room and I climbed into my bed. The clock showed at 12:30 a.m. I closed my eyes for a long time and didn't think that I would fall back asleep. But when I looked at my clock again, it was 2:45 a.m. I started to close my eyes again when I heard somebody knocking. It sounded like it was coming from the front door. I picked up my bat again and went to check it out. I had curtains covering the sidelights windows on each side of the door, so I couldn't see what was out there. However, I could tell something was moving outside from these shadows that the porch light had created. I pulled back a tiny portion of the curtain and I looked out. There was nothing in front of the door. The porch extended in front of my living room, so I went to look out those next. I lifted the shade on one of the windows and peeked out, but I didn't see anything here either. There was another knock at the door when I dropped the shade. I walked back over and didn't see movement through the curtain this time. I pulled it to the side and the same man from the computer was staring back at me through the window. His bulging eyes and bony face were pressed up against the window. I shouted and let go of the curtain. The door handle started moving and I quickly confirmed that it was already locked. "Go away," I shouted through the door. "I'm going to call the police." He knocked on the door again and then I heard him bump up against the window. I knew that he would be staring in again if I moved the curtain, so I waited for a few minutes. Finally, I heard him walk away. Before returning to my room, I ensured that all the doors and windows were locked, and then I got back in bed, but I couldn't fall asleep. I kept thinking about this stupid website. I didn't provide any information to that website, so I don't know how they got my address. Also, whoever did the makeup on the person at my door did a great job. It looked way too real and I'm afraid I won't be able to get their face out of my mind anytime soon. I'm lying in bed now trying to find the motivation to get up and check on my computer. I'll add an update if anything else happens, but I would stay away from that website if I were you. I finally got out of bed and I went to my office. There was no green light on the camera and the computer was off. I switched it on and then I went and made myself a coffee. Luckily, there were no deadlines for me this week, so I didn't have anything important going on. I still wanted to spend some time looking for other writing opportunities, but first, I had to run my virus scan. This was probably the only time that I hoped there would be a virus or a malware on my computer. but when the scan ended and there were no problems, I was disappointed. The day was mostly uneventful. I fell asleep at my desk though, and when I woke up, my computer was on that website again. It was on the page with the blank, black screened and a skull in the background that I hadn't noticed before. It was similar to the face that I saw on my screen, and at my door the night before. I clicked the X in the corner to close the window and got up from my desk. The fresh air sounded good, so I went outside for a walk. These warm sunny days in the fall were great, and I knew that it would be only a matter of time before I would be shoveling the snow off of my driveway. I walked through my street and into the wooded trail that connected some of the roads in the neighborhood. The leaves were starting to change color, and it was a nice, peaceful walk, until I heard the crunching of a stick off the trail. It was probably just a groundhog or a different small animal, but I was still a little on edge from what had happened last night, so it made me a little nervous. I kept going around a curve and further away from the houses. I heard the crunching sound again, and it sounded like somebody was walking through the bushes not too far from me. I couldn't see who was out there, but I could tell that they were getting closer. I didn't see whatever was out there, but I took a picture of where the noises were coming from so I could see if anything was there when I got back home. I picked up the pace and started running through the trail. The noises also got louder and stayed close behind me. Finally, I made it out of the pathway and onto the next street. I felt safer being in the open in front of all the houses. Someone was likely to be home if I had to scream for help. When I had walked far enough away from the trail entrance, I turned around to look back into the woods. I didn't see anything but felt like I was being watched. When I returned home, the door to my house was open part way. I know that I had closed and locked it before leaving on my walk. I didn't know whether to call and wait for the police or to go in and check it out myself. I leaned in through the door. "Hello?" I yelled. There was no response, and I didn't hear any noises inside. But I knew that I would feel better if the police went and checked it out first. After calling the non-emergency number, I went to the bottom of my driveway to wait. I watched the house until the police car arrived. 2 officers got out and I told them that the front door was open, but I knew that it was closed and locked when I had left. They went inside and after a few minutes they had returned. There was no one inside and they didn't see any signs of forced entry. They told me to look around and I could have a police report filled out if anything was missing. They said that it was probably a faulty latch or it wasn't closed right. As they were pulling out of my driveway, one of the officers said, "You might want to clean up your office. It looked pretty messed up in there." I thanked them and I went inside. My front door only has a deadbolt, so it has to be unlocked inside or with a key. The only ones with a spare key are my parents, and they would have let me know if they were stopping over. My chair was knocked over and the papers that had been on my desk were on the floor. The monitor was also covered in fingerprints and smudges. It isn't a touchscreen and I don't remember it being that dirty. Nothing else in the house was out of order, so I went to work cleaning up my office. I picked up my chair and put the papers on the desk. There were crumbles of dirt on the desk and keyboard, and my hands felt dusty and had black smudges after handling the documents. I also noticed a small trail of dirt from my office, getting smaller as it went to the front door. I guess I had wanted things to be more interesting, but this stuff isn't what I had in mind. After finding my screen cleaning spray, I scrubbed off the monitor and I got some of the smudges off, but no matter how hard I tried to clean it, some of the fingerprints just wouldn't come off. I felt uneasy for the rest of the night, especially with what had happened in my office. Where did all the dirt come from and why was so much in the office instead of by the front door? And how did somebody get into my house in the first place? I double and then triple checked all the locks on the doors and windows before going to bed. Even though I was anxious, my exhaustion took over and I fell asleep fast. I awoke to the buzzing of my phone as it vibrated around in the nightstand. It stopped for a few moments and I was almost back to sleep when it started buzzing again. My phone was pretty much always on vibrate and I wanted it on in case my parents had an emergency at night. I picked it up, worried that it might be them. The screen showed that it was an incoming video call from a number that I didn't recognize. I swiped down to decline it and saw that it was after midnight before I set it back down. It began vibrating again almost as soon as I had set it down. After swiping down a second time, I turned off my phone and set it on the nightstand. I almost fell asleep when I heard a loud thud coming from the outside of my room. Now I was wide awake and grabbing the bat before I stood up. I made my way cautiously to my bedroom door and looked out into the hallway. I had thought that I had closed that door before going to bed, but in my sleep-deprived state, I wasn't sure. I saw the dim glow coming out of my office, which meant that the monitor had to be on. Taking some deep breaths and gripping tightly onto the baseball bat, I slowly walked toward the light. I stopped right before the open door and leaned against the wall. It was quiet, but I could hear the faint sound of somebody talking. It was like when you're in a loud restaurant and you hear all the voices at once, but you can't make out any words. This was in a whisper though. While I was building the courage to enter the room, the voice stopped and the dim light went off. The light switch was just inside of the doorway, and I reached my arm around and flipped on the switch. I was positive that something was going to grab onto my arm, but luckily nothing happened. It took me a minute to get accustomed to the light before I could step into the room. The chair had been knocked over again and the keyboard was on the floor. Everything else looked normal. I searched around the rest of my house, but I didn't find anything. While I was walking back to my room, I heard my phone buzzing again. There's no question that the power was off when I left the room. The buzzing stopped before I made it back. When I walked through the doorway, I could see that the screen was on and that there was somebody's face on there. I backed out of the room and closed the door. I went into the other bedroom next to the office and I closed the door. This room was barely used and only had a mattress on the floor covered with sheets and a blanket. I sat down on it and listened for other noises in the house. And then it seemed like all of a sudden the sun was shining in through the window. I slowly got out of bed and walked over to my bedroom. I picked up my phone from the nightstand and saw that I had a voicemail from the number that I didn't recognize last night. I've got it and I'll play it now for you. I also remembered the picture that I took yesterday when I was out on the trail. There wasn't anyone in the picture, but when I looked closer, I thought that I could see someone. I'll add it right now. I'm hoping that it's just my imagination, and somebody will tell me that there's nothing weird on there. I'm not quite sure what to do next. It's been a few days since I last updated, and I want to fill you all in on what has been happening. I went through every inch of my house the morning after my last post, and it's a small one-story house with a basement, so it didn't take long to look through. There was nothing else out of the ordinary except for dirt smudges on the bottom of my bedspread. I shuddered, thinking that someone must have been in my room while I was sleeping the night before. But I'm glad that I didn't wake up to see whatever was there. At the suggestion of others, I found my attic access, which was in the ceiling of my closet. I had to get my ladder out of the garage to climb up there. After sliding the wooden cover out of the way, I climbed up and walked carefully along the wood beams, looking around with my flashlight. I didn't find any evidence of someone being up there. As I walked back to the entrance to the attic, I heard my front door closing. I couldn't see much through the square opening, but I heard footsteps coming down the hallway toward my room, and this was followed by my bedroom door slamming shut. I crouched down and slid the cover over the opening. I could hear them climbing up the ladder, so I sat down on the cover to hold it in place, and then I felt the cover being pushed. They were able to lift me up a little bit, but luckily I was too heavy. After a few minutes, they stopped and it got quiet. I was listening for the sound of them stepping down the ladder, but I didn't hear anything. It had to have been at least 10 minutes that I waited without hearing a thing. I quickly climbed off the cover and slid it open just a little. I saw part of the ladder, but needed to open it more to tell if anybody was still on there. And when I started moving it more, I felt a big push on the cover, almost sending it out of my hands. Before I got it back into place, I caught a glimpse of what was trying to get up here. It was something different than what was at my door the other night. There were clumps of long brown hair on top of its bony head. Its jaw was jutted out to the left, and the bone was broken and jagged beneath its nose. The thing stared up at me with one eye sunk deep inside the socket, and the other dangling out of the socket. I jumped back on the cover, putting all my weight on it. I felt the thing pushing me up again. When it finally stopped, I waited a much longer time before trying to see if it was safe to leave. When I slid it slowly off, I expected a hand to reach out and grab me, but nothing was there. I went down the ladder and closed the attic cover. My phone was sitting on the floor, which wasn't where I had left it. When I picked it up, it felt dusty and it was covered with smudges like my monitor. I wiped it on my shirt and then I called my parents. I really needed to get out of here for a while. They were glad that I called and said that they would be happy to have me stay with them for a few days. I grabbed a backpack and threw in some clothes and everything else that I would need for a few nights' stay. I had ordered a couple of Wi-Fi cameras after this all had started and spent some time getting them set up. One of them I had set up on my front porch and the other in front of my computer screen, since those seemed to be the places where most of the weird things were happening. While checking to ensure that I had everything, I heard some noises in the basement. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and phone, and I headed for the door. When I went past the basement door, I heard somebody coming up the stairs. I ran outside, locked the door behind me, and got into my car. After making sure that my car was empty, I drove to my parents' house. When I got there, I greeted my parents and then brought my things into my old room. I hadn't spent the night at their house in a very long time. They too hadn't been out in a while, so I didn't have to be afraid of getting sick from them. The first couple of nights there were great. I got caught up on my sleep and felt so much more well rested. I had a couple of notifications from my front porch camera the first few days, but it was from squirrels or chipmunks running into the view of the camera. I took a break from the computer and I didn't use my phone that much either during this time. The only phone calls that I received were from telemarketing or scams. Last night, however, things began to change. I got a notification from my front porch camera. I could see someone standing just barely in the view of the camera. They stayed still for a while before coming up to the porch, and it looked like they were wearing something over their head, but I couldn't tell what it was. I was happy that it wasn't the creepy-eyed skull guy that was there before, although this one also made me uncomfortable, especially once it had started talking. Later that night, I received a notification from the camera in front of my computer monitor. The screen was blank for a while before it went to the Fear for Life website. I'm glad that I wasn't at my house during these events, but I am a little worried that by staying at my parents' house, that they will become involved in this too. I think that I will at least stay another night here and then try to figure out what to do next. I've included the videos here in case you would like to see what happened. I'll post them now. It's looking pretty nice outside today, so I'm going to try to enjoy it before it starts getting colder again. Hopefully, since I'm not at my house or near my computer, I won't have any problems when I go for a walk. I went a few days without having any problems at my parents' house. There were a couple video calls that I didn't answer, but nothing strange happened at their house. The only notifications that I received were from my cam or from the wind or the raccoons that must live near my house. Yesterday, my parents went out for lunch and shopping, and I took the time to sit, relax, and enjoy the silence around me. I started drifting off to sleep while sitting on the couch, but I was pulled out of it by a knock coming from the patio door. Now their house backs up to the woods, so there shouldn't be any reason for somebody to go to that door. I got up and I peered around the entryway to the kitchen. The blinds were partially closed. From the light coming through, it didn't look like anybody was there. But still, I waited a minute before walking to the door. And then I opened the blinds all the way and was relieved that no one was there. I was worried that I put my parents in danger by coming here, so I figured that I would better go outside and take a look. I slid open the door wall and I stepped outside. The backyard was empty, but I thought that I saw movement in the woods at the end of the yard. When I looked around to find the movement again, I couldn't see anything. After pulling up my phone, I zoomed in and I took a picture of the woods. Before I could look at the picture, my phone vibrated to notify me that there was movement detected at my front door. The camera had saved a short video clip. I played it 3 or 4 times, but I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I received a few more notifications, but it was the same thing. Even looking closely and zooming in, I couldn't see anything moving. Needing a distraction, I turned on the TV and sat on the couch. My phone vibrated again, but this time, it showed that motion was detected from the camera that was by my monitor. Nothing showed on the camera at first, but I could hear something moving near it. It sounded like something was being dragged across the floor, and then something showed up in front of the camera, causing me to send my phone flying across the room. It looked like the thing that had been at my door the first night when this all had started. With my heartbeat rapidly increasing, I went over and picked up my phone. There was a new text message waiting for me. It was from a 5-digit number and it said, "Go home." I responded back with, "No." Shortly after, my phone vibrated from another text message. It was a different 5-digit number with an image attached. Risking a virus or malware, I downloaded the image. It was a picture of me standing on the patio of my parents' house. My phone vibrated again. Another message came through and another image. This one was my parents' front porch. My phone vibrated again and again as more pictures came through. Another one looked like it was the window to my parents' bedroom, and then the next was one outside my bedroom. All these messages and images kept coming from different numbers and showed different parts of the house. They were all taken from outside the house too. And then the original 5-digit number messaged me. It said, "Go home." It repeated the message about 10 times and then said, "Or we'll come inside to find you." I didn't want to put my parents in danger, but I also really didn't want to go home, especially after what I had saw on the camera. My concern for my parents won out, so I texted them and said that I needed to get back home for a writing job and that I would talk to them soon. I grabbed all my things and I got in my car. On the way back, I made a stop at the police station. After showing all the texts, pictures, and videos and telling them about the website, they said that it was probably a friend playing a prank on me. I told them that I was positive that it wasn't a prank from a friend, but I don't think they believed me that this was real. But they did at least take my information down and said that they would take a look into the website. They also promised to send a police car to drive by my parents' house later tonight. And then they recommended that I call the police if anything happens while I'm back home. That was a very disappointing stop. I took my time driving home, and when I finally pulled into the driveway, I just sat there. I started thinking of everything that had happened so far. Nothing had harmed me, but I was definitely afraid. I began wondering if maybe they won't hurt me and they're just trying to scare me. The website was definitely accurate about being afraid, even though I still didn't understand how it worked. I read a comment that somebody posted that maybe they were coming in through my computer. As much as I don't believe that could happen, I don't know how else they could have gotten inside. However, if that is true, then they could have easily hurt me by now, so maybe I don't need to be so afraid. Although it is hard not to after seeing what was at my door, on my monitor, and now on the cameras. I'm going to go check around the outside of my house once I can gather the courage and then go inside. Oh, and here are the other videos that I mentioned. It was weird how there was nothing on the video from in front of my house, especially with how many notifications that I had from it. It's been a rough couple of days since I last updated, but I'll continue where I left off last time. After sitting in my car in the driveway for a while, I finally got out and walked around my house. The doors were locked and the windows were closed, and there was no sign that anybody had broken into it. I unlocked the front door and went inside. The first thing that I noticed was a musty smell like an old damp basement. I opened a couple windows in the living room to let in some fresh air, and then I began checking each room. The bedspread and sheets in my bedroom were bunched up at the bottom of my bed. I know that I didn't leave it that way. I went into the office next. The chair was lying on its side on the floor. The monitor was on and the fearforlife.com page was opened up. It had a different picture this time and looked like the thing that showed up on my camera while I was at my parents' house. There was also dirt on the desk and around the floor, but I didn't vacuum it up last time, so I'm not sure if that was new. Next, I checked my attic again, but this time, I just peeked up there. I didn't want to have anything surprising me on the ladder like last time that I went up there. Luckily, I didn't see anything. The last place to check was the basement. The wood stairs creaked as I went down to the cold cement floor. There wasn't much down there, just some boxes, a ping pong table, and various other things that I didn't use too often. My basement was a big open area with a separate room for the furnace and some storage shelves. I always keep the door to that separate room closed, so of course, it had to be partway open. I pulled the cords to turn on the lights that I passed on my way to the room, and I stopped a few feet from the doorway. It didn't sound like anybody was in there, so I pushed the door all the way open, letting more light flood into the room. There was a light in the back of the room behind the furnace. That was also the only spot where somebody could have been hiding. As I started walking back there, the door slammed shut and I was plunged into darkness. I froze in place. The furnace shut off and the fan slowly stopped. I didn't hear anything else until I took a couple steps forward. It came from behind me and sounded like a pair of cleats clacking against a hard floor. I stopped and the noises stopped. And then I took a couple more steps, which were again followed by the clacking sound on the floor behind me. I kept walking around the furnace and I was too afraid to turn on the lights. I could hear it following behind me, so I made my way back to the door. I opened the door and stepped out, shutting it behind me. It slammed into the door as I took additional steps. I was about to run to the stairs when I saw the long-haired skeleton that I had seen the other day on my ladder when I was coming down from the attic. It was on the other side of the stairs, watching me. It wasn't moving at all and it looked like a Halloween decoration. However, when I stepped forward, it also stepped forward. I took another couple of steps forward and it did the same, and then I stepped back and it stepped back. It was closer to the stairs than I was, and I could tell that it would get to me before I made it to the first step if I ran there. I looked over at the ping pong table and stepped toward it. With each step that I took, it took another step toward me. I got to one side of the table and walked around it until the thing was on the other side of me. I needed to switch sides with it so I could be by the stairs though. I stepped toward the other side and it stepped closer to me again. This wasn't going to work, so I tried stepping backwards. It went backwards too, and it was going the way that I had hoped it would. I took a few more steps and now I was closer to the stairs with the table separating us. I took a deep breath and then ran to the stairs. It ran after me but stopped when I stopped about halfway up. It was right at the bottom of the stairs. I turned to face it and took a step backward up the stairs. It stepped backwards and away from the first step. I made it the rest of the way up like that and I closed the door behind me. I ran outside and called the police. While I was waiting, I watched the door to make sure that no one came out. When the car pulled up, I was disappointed to see that it was the same officer that had come over before. He walked around the outside first and then went in. "Nothing's in there," he said after coming back out rather quickly. "Are you sure that you saw someone?" "Yeah, there are 2 people in my basement," I said. The officer looked annoyed. "Well, I went down there and I checked everything. Make sure it's an actual emergency if you call us again." I said thank you to him and he went in his car and drove away. I had wanted to say thanks for nothing, but I didn't think that would have gone over very well. I went back inside and I looked into the basement. The lights were still on down there and the door was open to the furnace room. I didn't want to go down there again, but I felt that I had to, and the officer said that he'd check, so maybe it would be safe. After going down the stairs, I walked to the furnace room and looked behind me. Thankfully, nothing was there. The light was on behind the furnace, so I turned it off after confirming nothing was there, and then I turned off the remaining lights and I went upstairs. Nothing else happened that day, but at night, I woke up again around midnight. I was lying on the right side of my bed facing the wall and I felt the mattress sink down on the left side. The bedspread had moved and I grabbed onto it so that it wouldn't be pulled away from me. And then I felt a cold breath on my neck that reeked of mold and rotten meat. I bolted out of bed and ran outside, calling 911 on the way. Unfortunately, it was the same officer, and the first thing he said was, "Ah, great, it's you again." He went inside and came out pretty quickly after. "What a surprise, and nothing was in there and it doesn't look like anybody broke in," he said. And then he climbed in his car and rolled down the window. "You do know that we can fine you if you waste our time again." I tried to tell him that something was really there and that I wasn't lying, but he ignored me and drove off. I slept in my car the rest of the night with the doors locked. Before I went to bed the next night, I set up a camera facing my bed to see if something would happen again. At some point during the night, I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, the covers were pulled down on the other side of the bed. I thought about how nothing had hurt me so far. Also, somebody had replied to an earlier post that I made that, "This is your life now," so maybe I just needed to learn to live with it. I lay back in bed and I fell asleep. I watched the video the next morning and saw what had gotten into my bed. It could have hurt me if it wanted to, but it didn't, so I felt a little more safe. The next couple of days, there were more noises in the house and visitors at night, but it didn't really bother me as much anymore. Of course, I still didn't understand how the website was able to do all this, but if it was only trying to scare me, it wasn't that big of a deal. Plus, it would end tomorrow on Halloween. I meant to post this earlier, but I fell asleep while typing it up. I just went to the kitchen to get a cup of water and noticed all the sharp knives were missing from the knife block that I keep on the counter. I'm back in my room now with the door closed and locked and wondering what to do. There are noises coming from above me in the attic and out in the hallway. My phone just buzzed a bunch of times from notifications from my cameras. There's someone at my front door again, and I just watched something crawl out of my computer monitor. Now someone is knocking on my bedroom door and I heard the cover from the attic slide open. I moved my dresser in front of the closet door to block it. And there's also somebody staring in at me through my bedroom window. Now the knocking is also coming from my closet door and they are all whispering like they were in the videos. I was able to record it and reverse the audio like somebody had told me to do before. They are all saying, 5 more minutes until Halloween.